Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Rizal. Where's Rizal? There you go. Rizal and Pak Andreas, my good friend, for your very kind remarks. Let me also acknowledge a few people in this meeting today. First, of course, Pak Mahfud Siddiq, the chairman of the Commission on Foreign Affairs and Security. Thank you very much for your presence here. And also Pak Najib, thank you very much for your presence here. Pak Profesor Kacung Marijan, terima kasih. Pak Fasli Jalal, no relation to me, but I tell people I'm related to him because I'm very proud of him. You know, he's an exceptional human being. Professor Peter McPherson, can I ask you to stand up, Peter? Good. He's the American chair of the Indonesia-US Higher Education Council, right? I hope I said it right. Pak Gusti Nupansha, selamat datang. Dr. Jonathan Wilkenfield, thank you for having us use your facility. I hear Professor Anies Baswedan being mentioned. There you go. Anies, how are you? One of the brightest young leaders that I have ever known in Indonesia. And all the directors and professors and sponsors. And one more person, my good friend Brooke Spellman. Can I ask you to stand up, Brooke? Good. I don't know who she is, but I just want to know. I'm just kidding. She is the Indonesian desk officer. So she wakes up, works, eats, and sleeps every day thinking about Indonesia and the State Department. So thank you. Look, I want to say thank you to all the organizers. I know everybody has been working hard on this. The I-4, Permias DC, Grace, and everybody else. And every organization assists, IAA, Radio PPI Dunia, everybody. Thank you very much for organizing this very important conference. I just want to give a little bit of perspective of what we're trying to do and where we think we should go. I begin with this one statement. We are in a good place now. Indonesia, as we stand here now, is in a good place. Why do I say that? You look at all the political turbulence around the world, we have democratic stability. We are known around the world and in America also as a stable democracy, the largest democracy in Southeast Asia, arguably the strongest democracy in Southeast Asia. We have the largest middle class. We're known as the emerging economy. We're a member of the G20, high growth, tolerant country, despite some problems here and there. But the image of Indonesia, politically, strategically, diplomatically, culturally, is good. Yeah. So we're in a good place, right? And the projections about Indonesia in the future is also good, if not very good. And there are all kinds of, you hear about BRIC, right? Brazil, Russia, India, and China. But you look at many other projections, they all say that Indonesia's future in the coming decades are just bright, right? There's something called Chivets. They said the next markets, the next bright lights will be Colombia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Egypt, Turkey, and South Africa. There's something called N11 as well. That also includes Indonesia, the next 11 countries. And then the Asian Development Bank says recently that this will be the Asian century, and 90% or 95% of the Asian economy will be driven by 7 countries only, and Indonesia is one of them. There's something called EAGLE. I begin to forget what all these stands for, but I would say in 90% of all the projections of great countries and great economies in the coming 3 or 4 decades, Indonesia is always included in them, right? People even say that Indonesia, we're now the 18th largest economy in the world, will be the top 10 largest economies in the coming decades. And Kevin Brunt, my good friend, even said, he's been saying publicly that Indonesia will be the 6th largest economies in the coming decades, right? So everybody says, good job Indonesia now, and then we expect more great things to come from you. But what we all need to know is that these are projections, not where we are, but where we could be, right? And as you know, history is never about linear projections. You know, life is not like that, right? Business is not like that. Even how you plan college and your marriage, you know, you may think, hey, that girl is beautiful, I'm gonna marry her. And it's never like that, right? It's never a linear projection. There's a lot of factors that can derail us from achieving that good to great. Yeah. That tipping point is not necessarily there yet. So that's what I want to alert you. And the things that can bring us into that linear projection of greatness is, one, if we can maintain the momentum that we have already. Yeah. We have great momentum since, in the past decade or so. If we can maintain that, then we have a better chance of reaching that great Indonesia. If we can maintain a process whereby we can have a good generation of leaders after 2014, not just one guy, not just one good president, but a number of good leaders at the top, at the provincial level, in civil society, in business, across the board, then we can reach that greatness. And if we can continue to evolve the mindset, then we can achieve that greatness. You know, you ask me, what is it so special about China? Right? That China now is known, not as, I disagree with those who say China is a rising power. I disagree. China is not a rising power. China is an established power, right? Already an established power. You can feel it in the region and in the world. And you ask me, why is China doing so well now? And why is India also called a rising power doing so well now? It's not the numbers. It's not the fact that their trade, their innovations, their graduates, and so on are remarkable. Yeah. It's not in the numbers, it's not in the statistics, it's not in the number of GDPs. It's not the fact that China has now become the second largest economy in the world. It's in the fact that their mindset changed, starting in the late 70s. And Indian mindset also changed, starting in the early 90s. Something happened that they see themselves differently, they see their opportunities differently, and they see the world differently. Chinese and Indians, when they see the world, they don't see it as a threat or as an impediment. They see it as an opportunity. There's a great report by a French foundation called the Fondation Politique. I don't speak French, but it sounds French. Right? And it looked at youth around the world, and they asked the youth, what do they think about a number of issues? Now, this is one of the most interesting polls that I've ever read. It found that in China, 91% of the youth love globalization. Not just like, love. And they think that globalization is a key part of their future, of their success. 91%. In India, it's 89%. In America, surprisingly, they found it's about 77%. High, but somewhat still below China and India, right? They didn't have it on Indonesia, but the lowest is about Greece. Greece is about 49% or something, right? Brazil is slightly above America, but still below China and India, right? But what it says was there is a leap, a mental leap in how they see the world and how they see themselves fit into that new world. That changes everything. That changes how they make political decisions, that changes how they make business decisions, and changes how they make the laws and everything. So again, my point is, if you want to reach from where we are to where we could be, if you want to go from good to great, if you want to be from the 18th largest economy in the world to top 10 or even top 6, if you want to be one of the most innovative and competitive nations in Asia, it's not enough just to say, we're good. You need to change the mindset. and you need to leave the comfort zone. I guarantee you, every nation that finds happiness in the comfort zone is going to lose. Why? Because if you're in the comfort zone, you can stop trying. Yeah, right? You think you're so good, why try? Why compete? Why change? Why self-reinvent? There's no reason for it. And the moment you think that way, whether you're America, Brazil, South Africa, China, or India, you will lose, right? Because winners in the 21st century are those who constantly say, what else, what more, and why not, right? These are the people who will win the world in politics, in business, and in government. And my key point, and this is related to what Andreas has just said, we cannot be this great nation in Asia, we cannot be this great 21st century Indonesia unless we have a vibrant intellectual community, right? Keep in mind, this intellectual revolution is what turned Indonesia into a nation in the first place, right? We were dijajah, colonized for hundreds of years. Why? Because mindset did not change, but at some point, some of our leaders started learning about democracy, about equality, about nationalism, right? About military affairs, about modernity, and this intellectual force is what brought independence into the country in 1945, right? In 1908, in 1928, and then 1945. And this is the same second revolution that you need. You know, the moving from just Indonesia being independent to Indonesia being a great, dynamic, innovative country. And we can only do so if we have a strong critical mass of vibrant intellectual community driving that, right? Driving that in civil society, in bureaucracy, in government, and also in parliament. You know, people talk about Indonesians going abroad as brain drain. Wrong. It's brain gain. They may leave for 4 or 5 years, some 10 years, but their heart is always with Indonesia. I know that, right? Their mind is always with Indonesia. And they always ask, what can we do for our people back home? You know, this is something, same thing that happened to India, right? The Indian diaspora used to be said to be brain drained. They left the country, they're in London, they talk like British people. But it's true for some time, but afterwards they returned to India and became one of the motors of India's rapid transformation. So again, I see the Indonesian experts, PhDs, students, and so on as the brain gain for Indonesia. It's not losing something, it's gaining something for us. And I think this meeting is very important because what you do is that you help to gather the community of Indonesian intellectuals and experts abroad and find out what they can do to advance US-Indonesia relations, but also to advance Indonesia as a nation. I think this is a very important task, and I advise you, this is not a forum where you pat each other in the back. Great job, great job, great job. No, if you have that approach, you go the wrong way. This is the forum where you ask hard questions. Hard questions. What are we doing not enough? You ask hard questions. What can we do more? Why do I say that? Honestly, you, the intellectual community in the US, have not become a force you should be, or you can be. Yeah, right? You have started this wonderful thing. You have started to think about what you can do together, but your contributions, it's still not as optimal as it can be, right? And this is what you need to figure out, right? How can this meeting produce something concrete, something beneficial to advance research and education and innovation in Indonesia? And in Indonesia, we also have much work to do, right? Much work to do. One, I noticed that the permission for research is still not easy for Indonesia. I met somebody in Cornell the other day. A woman was doing a PhD, And she says, I love Indonesia, I'm so enamored by your country, I want to do research. 9 months, it took 9 months for her izin, yeah, to come. 9 months. She's not an agent. She's not, somebody who wants to do harm for Indonesia. She's someone who loves Indonesia and wants to do non-political work, academic work, to do research, right? That's one thing that we have to do better on. Another one that we need to do better, we have to create a society in Indonesia where excellence is rewarded. You know, I look at the last, salary for a professor, somebody who knows everything there is to know about the subject, and his salary is about, take-home pay is about 9 million, $1,000. You know, all that knowledge, all that experience, it costs $1,000 a month. It's way too low. It only shows that in our society, excellence is not rewarded the way it should be. You know, my father is the world foremost expert on maritime law, right? He gets invited all over the place. I think you know Professor Jalal. But he tells me jokingly, he doesn't complain. He tells me, son, you know, every time I'm invited to do a seminar, my fee is $200,000 or $20, right, for a world maritime expert. Right? So again, the point is we need to start evolving a society whereby the glory and the reward for excellence really goes to the experts, the pakar, and the professors. And I told you earlier that we're not doing that well, or we are not living up to our potentials. Let me give you some statistics. There's only 205 researchers in R&D for every 1 million Indonesians. So 205. You know what it is in the US? 4,663. In China, it's 1,071. In terms of articles written in journals, yearly there's 198 Indonesian articles in science and technology. You know what it is in the US? Let's go for China first. 56,806 compared to our 198. The UK is 40,000, which is much smaller number of population. Germany is 44,000. Malaysia is 4 times us at 800. Iran is 4,366 articles yearly. And America is 209,000, way beyond everybody else. So this, again, gives you a sense that we have a lot of potential, a lot of semangat, yeah? But we are not pulling our weight in terms of where we are in the marketplace of ideas globally, right? In the marketplace of ideas globally. And this is what we need to do. I think one of the things that essentially that we need to do in the US is for Permias. Where are Permias people? Permias, there you go. One thing that you need to do is to make sure that Permias di Amerika jauh lebih kompak. You know, when I was studying here in 1979, there's such a thing as Permias USA, right? And the Permias in DC, in LA, in San Francisco, in Boston, they connect with one another, and they actually have an annual meeting. But now, I don't know what happened. There's not a Permias USA meeting. I know you're trying to pull that off, and I hope you can do that this year. But I think it's very important as part of Indonesia's intellectual growth that Permias becomes part of it. And the first step you need to do is to have the first meeting of all Permias throughout the United States, right? Now, I want to close with just one last thing about what I think we can do. This is about the idea of a diaspora policy or paradigm. Diaspora paradigm. Now, what does that mean? Since we became independent, I've never heard the term diaspora, Indonesia. Usually people talk about diaspora as Chinese diaspora yang ada di Indonesia, right? And we use it somewhat with anxiety and in a negative way. How do we withstand the Chinese diaspora? But no one really talks about Indonesian diaspora. And when we talk about Indonesians who live abroad, the term that we use is TKI. Yeah, right? TKI is very important, very, very important. But TKI is one part of the larger community of Indonesians abroad. Indonesians abroad have TKI, have professionals, have orang yang punya restoran, orang yang di creative industry, people who work in Silicon Valley, people who have towing trucks like Pak Asikin di sini, people who form jemaah, the imam yang di sini. It's such a rich and diverse community. And even until now, we don't know how many Indonesians live abroad. I asked around, how many Indonesians live outside Indonesia? We know how many in Malaysia, it's about 2 million. Right? We know how many who live in Singapore. But beyond that, not much is known. And what is our definition of diaspora? It's very simple. Diaspora is somebody yang berdarah dan berjiwa Indonesia. Right? For my American friends who have Indonesian blood and Indonesian mind. So he can be no longer an Indonesian citizen, but he's probably married to a British or American and have mixed kids. But so long as his heart or her heart remains with Indonesia, he's an Indonesian diaspora, right? And even an American who loves Indonesia, we count him or her as a diaspora. Don Emerson, for example, one of the professors who speak very good Indonesian, he studies Indonesian all his life, or this woman, Nancy Florida, who speaks Japanese, more Japanese than any Japanese I know. She translates over 700,000 pages, 700 pages of old Japanese literature into English. She loves Indonesia and she's part of the Indonesian diaspora. But my point is, what do we do with them? Such a rich, economically, but such a rich community of Indonesia-loving talents and skills and ideas and aspirations, right? So what we're trying to do in July is to have the world's first Indonesian Diaspora Congress in Los Angeles. The first time. And this reflects a shift of attitude in seeing Indonesians, no matter what the citizenship, no matter what the passport, no matter what the visa, to gather in Los Angeles and to see if they can be not just a voice, but a force. A force for Indonesia and a force for a better world. I invite everybody here to take part in the Indonesian Diaspora Congress. It's not just going to be for you, those living in the US, but those living worldwide. And we're going to invite people like Anggun, who has become an international superstar. People like Sehat Sutarja. Sehat Sutarja is an incredible person. Dia dapat ijazah listrik dari Pasar Baru at the age of 12 years old. And now he's a multi-billionaire who invents chips that is used in every product, from Samsung to Mac to iPads to Blackberries, is produced by an Indonesian, believe it or not. Right? So we're going to gather all the Indonesian talents, no matter what level economically and what their aspirations and what is their legal status, and we're going to count them as an asset, and as a pillar of our economic growth and national projections from becoming good to great. So again, this is the context by which you are holding this meeting. It's not just another meeting. It's not a meeting for you to pat each other in the back, but a meeting where you ask hard questions and try to figure out where you could fit in this larger scheme of things for Indonesia's effort to go from good to great and become a great nation in Asia, Pacific, and in the world in the